All right, shalom, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, before I get started, I would like to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Chakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elder bishops, a great millstone, to rule well and teach well and taught us his truth. Peace and salutation to the elect, okay, the Bayashah Dawadah, which is the house of David, okay. This is your brother Thabo coming back to you with another lesson in the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. And the title of this lesson is what is the MOTB? Okay. What is the MOTB? You know, in Revelation, the 13th chapter and the 16th verse. You know, in this lesson, what I'm going to be going into, you know, just breaking down what it is, you know, and you know, and going into a little bit of Esau's, you know, mindset behind it, you know, what he's trying to accomplish, you know, and bringing, you know, more information and context out of it, you know, dealing with that, okay, because there's a lot of doctrines going around, okay, even with dealing with the IUIC, they brought out, like, over the years, 4 different, maybe 5 different doctrines on what the MOTB was, okay, you know, Christians, you believe it's this, it's that, you know, just people just believe it's something on what it's not, okay, and through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, you know, starting with our apostles, okay, great millstone, you know, they ended up through the spirit, and even their elders, you know, they through the spirit ended up bringing out what it actually was, okay, and we could see it, you know, as we do our diligent research also, you know. But without further ado, I just looked up chip implants. It says chip implants are small rice grain size integrated circuits that can be implanted subcutaneously in the body. They can be used for various purposes, including unlocking doors, storing emergency contact information, and acting as a swipe key or credit card. There are 2 main types of chip implants. Radio frequency identification, RFID, contain a unique ID number that can be linked to external databases holding personal information. And we're going to stop right there. So I looked up on ChatGPT. If the RFID chip becomes implemented, what would it be used for on your everyday life? Now, the reason why I looked that up is because the radio frequency identification chip, as it's telling you what it is, it's an identification chip. Okay, something to identify you, okay, to track you, okay, to know your whole personal, to store. It's a device that stores your personal life and information on it. Just how they have something called social security numbers, okay, birth certificates, certain things like this, and it's to identify who you are. This is why when you go to a job, right? They should tell you to show proof of identification. They tell you show your ID, social security card, or a birth certificate. Okay, to show to identify who you are. Okay, and this is something that from birth Esau used to track, first of all, track us and to keep us, you know, locked into this system. Okay, so what? So that's why when I looked up chip implants, and that's the first thing that came up through the spirit, that's what the MOTB is, the mark of the beast. It's the RFID chip. It's a radio frequency identification chip, okay? And I looked up, if the RFID chip become implemented, what would it be used for on your everyday life? It says if RFID radio frequency identification chips become widely implemented in everyday life, they could be used in a variety of ways to make daily activities more efficient, secure, and automated. Here's how they might affect everyday life. Personal identification and security. Contactless payments similar to credit cards or phones with NFC. An implemented RFID chip could be used to pay for items by simply waving your hand over a reader. Okay, and we see in certain different countries that this is already happening. Okay, even over here in America, it's already starting to happen. Okay, where they have the chip readers, okay, placed in certain stores, okay, where you're able to wave it. And some people actually have the chip, okay, have a form of the chip, okay, where they're able to use that chip, okay, to pay, okay, or use that chip to, you know, do certain things. It says, digital ID. Your chip could store ID information for entering buildings, verifying age at bars or stores, or logging into systems. You see, so it tracks and holds your data, okay, on what you need to verify who you are. Okay, it says medical records access. In emergencies, doctors could instantly scan your chip to access vital health information, blood type, allergies, medications, medical history. Okay, home and lifestyle, smart home access, unlock doors, start your car, and activate home systems like lights or thermostats with a wave at your hand. You know, it says pet tracking. We already know, okay, when you get a pet, you know, and they get their shots, and what they get, they stick a chip within your pet. Okay, because once you end up, well, and you can voluntarily do that, but the reason why they do that is because it tracks where if your pet ever gets lost, okay, they're able to track where your pet is, what location your pet's at, okay? So using that, you could include this with this is because that's exactly what Esau, the so-called white man, he's trying to accomplish. Okay, he's trying to know your every move. Okay, he's trying to know your every move and have all your, and it's easier to track who you are. Okay, this is why the scripture says in Habakkuk, okay, which I'll grab real quick, the 2nd chapter. So like this is Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, and I'll start at the 4th verse. It says, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him. Okay, which is talk about Esau. It says, but the just shall live by faith, right? The elect are going to live by faith. Okay, they're going to move and operate in faith in these times, okay, that are to come. You see, it says, yeah, also because he transgresseth by wine, okay, his philosophy, okay, and the way he does that is by, pushing his way of life onto the people, okay. It says he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell and is as death. Okay, and this is everything you're seeing in the society right now. It's a death society. When you look at the society, the first thing you think of is death. Okay, the crops are dead, the air is polluted, the water's polluted. Okay, cutting the tree, millions of trees are being cut down. Okay, there's no life that comes out of this society. Okay, people killing each other every day. You see, it says, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. And that's his end goal, is the one world order. Okay, the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, where he's ruling over all people. And a way he's going to be able to track and control that is with that chip. Okay, that's a way he's gonna do it. Okay, and that's that God complex Esau has. Okay, that's that complex. Okay, because when you get 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, it speaks of how he opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called the Most High. Okay, when he sitteth in the temple, the Most High shewing himself that he is power. Okay, or that he is a God. You see, because his what he is trying to accomplish is, as the scripture says in Psalms, the 49th chapter. He believes his house is going to continue forever. He's trying to become a god. This is why you see certain things like transhumanism, meta, okay? And he's trying to find certain ways where he could elevate, okay, into becoming that power. And a way he's going to do that is by making that shit mandatory, You see? So going back to what I was reading, it says home and lifestyle. Okay, we'll just go work and travel. Access control at work. It says public transport, airport security and boarding. Okay, it says shopping and services, and whatnot. So it's basically going to be used for your everyday life. Okay, so you can move and navigate in life. Okay, and if you don't have this type of chip, when it comes to that point, you're basically going to be an outcast of society. Why are you going to be an outcast? Well, because you're not emerging with this new system. And I believe there was a quote from Klaus Schwab where he said, and it was a quote that was stated, speaking of it, if you don't merge with this new system to come, you're basically going to have no place in society. So they're already telling you that, you're going to be a complete outcast. You see, because you're not agreeing to the system. Okay, so now you're going to be looked at as the enemy. You see? So let's get a couple scriptures and then we'll close out. Let's get Revelation 13 and 16. Okay, this is Revelation chapter 13 and verse 16, and it says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor." You see, look how it says rich and poor, because basically the middle class dealing with this ship, the middle class is going to be completely cut out. Now it's just going to be basically like two sects of people, at that point, rich and poor. You see, even now they were actually speaking of like, I forgot what article I seen, but basically, if a homeless man, is able to get the chip, okay, now he's able to move in society more fluently. You see, so now basically he's more richer than the person who had, 100,000 in his bank, or something to that effect, because the other guy with the 100,000 didn't take the chip. So now he's able to move more properly. Okay, he's able to get certain things now, get a job, and whatnot. And we know that eventually our job, we're gonna be jobs are gonna be replaced at some point. You know what I'm saying? Which they're already starting to do. But it says Revelation 13 and 16, he calls it all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. Now, when you go into that word mark, the Greek word is charagma. Okay, it says, from the same as G5482, a scratch or etching stamp as a badge of servitude. Okay, now we're just going to grab this word servitude and we'll come back to this. Okay, servitude is the state of being a slave or completely subject to someone more powerful. Okay, and we'll keep this in mind because it's going to be brought up again. It says, or sculptured figure, statue, graven mark. Okay, a stamp, imprinted mark. It says a mark stamped on the forehead of the right hand as the, we'll skip that. It says the mark branded upon horses. Now mark branded upon horses. Now let's look that up. And let's get some more context on what that means. Okay, it says, branding is a traditional method of permanently marking horses for identification purposes. It involves using a heated iron, hot branding, or a supercooled iron freeze branding to create a scar on the horse's skin. The brand serves as a unique identifier, often indicating the owner, ranch, or breed registry. So that mark, okay, that's branded upon horses is to identify. You see, then we keep seeing this word identify because that's the whole point. It's to identify who you are. Okay, to know who you are. There's gonna be a point in time where there's no such thing as privacy. Okay. So going back here, it says things carved, sculpture, graven, work. So it's a physical mark. It's not like it's IUIC said a spiritual mark or it's sin. No, this is a physical mark that's gonna be implemented within you. You see. And now remember, we said servitude, okay, because that's what this mark is going to basically, this is a lot, kid. Give me a second. Okay, look up servitude, the state of being a slave, which right now we are slaves, okay, as of right now also, just because we're not sitting there picking cotton and how it was in slavery, back then doesn't mean we're slaves. Okay, Esau is now attacking the mind. Okay, that's how he has us trapped and enslaved, and still at that same point we're working for the so-called white people. Okay, our taxes pay the top elites debt. Okay, when you actually want to do your research and go into it. Okay, it says the state of being slave or completely subject to someone more powerful, and that's exactly what is going to take place. Being subject to someone more powerful. You're basically gonna taking the chip or having that MOTB. You're making an agreement, which is a covenant with that person. Okay, which is actually breaking the law. When you go into the law, you see. So And when it says right hand or forehead, that doesn't mean if you take it in your fucking butt, because we heard this multiple times. And excuse me for my French, but if you take it in your butt, that doesn't mean that's the same thing. No matter where you take this chip, okay, you're making it a covenant with this damn devil, no matter how you look at it. Okay, and I wanted to go into this last verse right here, but we'll read into it. It says verse 17, and that no man might buy or sell save he had the mark. See, so you're not going to be able to function in society unless you have this mark. You're not going to be able to move around comfortably in the society unless you have the mark. You're not going to be able to do anything in a society if you don't have this mark. You see, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. It says, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 636. Now, when you go and you click 636, it says the Greek word is chi x stigma. Okay, and when you go into G4742, okay, right here, and you click on it, which it's the root word for it, which is stigma. It says what? It says from a primary to stick, prick, a mark, incised, or punched. Okay, I want to go into that word incised, see what that means. It says mark or decorate with a cut or series of cuts. Engrave, it's a cut. Remember, and when you're getting surgery to implement this, you're going to get surgery to implement this mark. Okay, so you're putting a cut within you. You see, so it's the scriptures is literally breaking down on what this mark is. You see, so when you go to the outline, it says, matter of fact, before we go to the outline, it says right here, for recognition of ownership. Okay, because now you're being branded. Remember, when the owner brands the horse, okay, it's to identify, but it's showing also a recognition of ownership. Okay, now who that horse belongs to. Okay, and that's the same thing Esau's trying to do. That's why we read Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. He gathered unto him all people, and heapeth unto him all people, and gathered unto him all nations. Roughly paraphrasing it, because that's what he's trying to do. Okay, it is stamp, and mark you, and so it signifies that he owns you. You see, it says a mark pricked in or branded upon the body. So it's a physical mark. It says to ancient Oriental uses, slaves and soldiers bore the name of the stamp of their master or commander branded or pricked into their bodies to indicate what master or general they belonged to. And they were even some devotees who stamped themselves in a way with the token of their gods, you see. And that was a custom. That was your practice, among, heathen nations and stuff like that. You would do that to signify who is your God, what God you follow, what God you worship. And Esau has that God complex. So you taking that mark, you're basically saying Esau is your power. He is your God. You're following him. Which the scriptures talk about, make no covenant with the heathen, roughly paraphrasing, or make no covenant with other gods. Only worship your Lord, thy power only, roughly paraphrasing it. So the scriptures is clear and point telling you on what this mark is, okay, and what it's going to be used for, okay, and what you're able to do with the mark, okay. You might not buy or sell, okay, meaning you can't buy or sell anything. You won't be able, on this daily, we're able to go over to stores right now. We're able to buy certain things. We're able to sell certain things online. But when the chip becomes mandatory, and that's the only thing that that's the thing that you're going to need to be able to function. You see, so if you don't have it, you're not going to be able to really function in society. Okay, how are you going to buy something? You're not going to be able to, you see. Now let's get Revelation, the 16th chapter. Okay, in the 2nd verse, and we'll close off after this. This is Revelation chapter 16 and verse 2. It says, and the first went out and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them that which worshipped the image. Now, I want to go into the NLT and read that. It says, so the first angel left the temple and poured out his bowl on the earth, and horrible malignant sores broke out on everyone who had the mark of the beast and who worshipped his statue. Now, when you go into that word Malignant, it says, of a disease, very virulent and infectious. And look, so what can get affected? A cut. Something that's, so in order for you to put that chip, you're not to get cut, okay? In a way, you're not to get cut. You see? And that's actually, when you want to go deep, that's spiritual. You see? Because dealing with a marriage, okay? And when you go back, into dealing with ancient Israel, when a man would take the woman into the bed chambers, okay, when they were gonna get married and become one, okay, he would have to go in onto her, which meaning he would have to make a covenant with her, which is an agreement, and it was really a cut, right? Because because she's a virgin, you see. So it's actually very spiritual, you see, on that part. But it says cancerous, you see. So this and what could cause cancer? Radiation. Look, when you scroll down, I looked up, could a radiation cause cancer? Yes, radiation can cause cancer. And we could stop it right there, because that's what's going to happen due to the radiation and the things in that case. That's what's going to, that chip is going to cause that type of issue, okay? Because it's an RFID chip, okay? It's literally a implant device going into your body, okay? So, Lord willing, well, I'll break this down a little bit more. It says malignant sores broke out on everyone who had the mark of the beast. So it broke out on everyone who had that chip, you see, and worshipped his statue, you see. Okay, so Lord willing, this was edifying. Before I close off, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, HaKodash, double honors to the apostles and other bishops, a great millstone, the Ruba and teacher, and taught us his truth. Peace and salutation, as always, to the elect. Shalom.